That was a Halley's Comet moment. I'm like, this is not going to happen again in my career, and I can't say no regardless of the outcome.
Jayanta Jenkins is a global creative executive and brand leader with more than 2 decades of experience shaping culturally influential brands at scale. He has held senior creative leadership roles at Apple Beats by Dre, Twitter, Disney, Samsung Mobile, and most recently Starbucks, where he led global creative expression across campaigns, packaging, and in-store experiences. Across agency and in-house leadership, Jayanta has helped define brand voice during pivotal cultural moments, built creative organizations inside complex systems, and navigated the tension between craft and commercial performance. Jayanta, welcome to the Media Machine.
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Julie, very much. I really thank you both. The warm welcome.
Oh, thank you. Julie and I wrote that together. I know that you guys have known each other for a long time, and so we're just beyond grateful that you took the time to come and join us. So thank you.
Yes, I am so happy you're here. And we met when we were 18 years old in college, like our first day at college, and we've been friends ever since. With all of the things that you've done, Jayanta, and I've been like on the side cheering for you and so happy to see all the work. You've done incredible, creative, strategic, humongous things in your life. We've never talked about how you were as a child. When did you really recognize that you had these creative instincts that maybe some other people didn't have? Did you ever feel like you didn't quite fit in the box? Tell us what that was like.
So interesting. And I now have enough perspective to look at my childhood and maybe have a point of view on how I viewed the world. I will say first, I grew up in Centerville, Virginia, which in the 80s, well, really the 70s and the 80s, it was a small growing suburb of Washington, D.C. It's in Northern Virginia. I grew up about 7 miles west of Dulles Airport. And I grew up with my grandparents on a large plot of land that had barns and cattle and lots of trees and places to roam, chickens. And I had a cousin that lived in DC, and I was always envious of his ability to live in the city, and I was stuck in the country. The things I had access to that at the time I took for granted was this expansive sky with all these stars that I would look up out at night. And what I recall, one of my very earliest memories about just connecting with the world is I recall looking up at the sky, the night sky, and just saying that I want to find my place on this planet, not amongst the stars, but just there was something about looking at the vastness of the sky and realizing how we're all connected to it that had a profound effect on me. And I've never shared this before, but I also would wish aliens would pick me up. I was out there actually at night waiting for aliens to come and grab me, which to my recollection has not happened. But that was really my first, I think, memories of just connecting just to the vastness of what we're all connected to. And I would also say that Saturday morning cartoons and public broadcast, PBS, were massive for me growing up as a child, really more PBS than Saturday morning cartoons. And there are so many amazing programs, ones that we remember, like The Electric Company, to obviously Sesame Street. But there are also documentaries about photographers and these points of view in places around the world that I really had a lot of curiosity about as a young child. And I spent a lot of time at the library, at the Centerville Library. I think like a lot of kids growing up in the 70s in my area, comic books were big. And my father worked near the Smithsonian Mall. So I ended up spending a lot of weekends going to the Air and Space Museum, which really unpacked my love of science and technology and the universe and the study of our solar system. Directly across from the Air and Space Museum was the Hirshhorn. I spent I got my 10,000 hours at the Hirshhorn and the National Gallery of Art. And those were my beginning windows into culture, creativity, storytelling, technology, anthropology. And I am just really grateful that those were things that were just part of my very organic existence growing up.
So when did you realize your creative skills were different than other people's and you really felt like you had something special you wanted to pursue?
I don't know to this day that I actually see myself in that manner. I will say that I have relentlessly pursued Actually, I've been relentlessly curious and I love storytelling. And I have become really keen to just understand how I can synthesize the things that we experience and show them to us in a way that creates connection. That's really how I've looked at it, more so than am I the most creative person in the room or a creative visionary. I just haven't been able to look at myself in the mirror and go down that path. And I'm grateful that people see and acknowledge me as someone that has contributed creatively from a business perspective at a level that has given me an opportunity to share in forums like this and to do things on behalf of brands that connect people and drive business impact for brands. But I have a 7-year-old and it's almost like I see the world the way that he does. I'm very envious of him in a lot of ways because a lot of this is so new to him and I get to become like this lighthouse for him.
Wow. As you were describing, you were painting this picture of you being that little kid looking out at the stars, at the universe. And you actually brought me back to when I was 12 years old. I used to do that. I grew up out on Long Island. I grew up in Montauk and then we moved to East Hampton, but I used to ride my bike to the beach and I would do that. Like I found this little nook where I could go in and I would park my bike and I would just look out into the universe, it looked like the universe to me. And like when you were painting that picture, you transported me back to when I was 12 years old. So that was beautiful. Imagine that little kid looking at his future self and what he became and the things that his future self would end up doing. Now that you can look back at that little kid, what would you tell that little kid?
It is a great question. And the only modification is I'm in the state of becoming. So what I would say to my 7-year-old, 5-year-old self is enjoy the freedom of being an explorer and don't put too much pressure on yourself to perform. And I think the other thing that I would share with that 7-year-old or the things I'm sharing with my 7-year-old is really refining your voice and celebrating your voice. And it's okay to say things differently, see things differently, experiencing things differently, because I think it creates empathy for others. And I think that's the other thing I would say to my 7-year-old self is really try to put yourself in other people's shoes so you can tell stories that connect people even more meaningfully and just have fun. That's remained true from that moment, staring up at the night sky and the visible universe to today. And I'm grateful because the wisdom that I've gained and the falling up and getting myself back up on my feet along the way has just created this amazing level of resilience. And that's actually the way I'll close this part down is that's what I would tell my 7-year-old self. You're going to fall and you're going to get back up. Feel the feelings. Don't hold it in. Feel your feelings. Because I think for little boys and little girls across the board, we're just socialized to internalize things. And I think that's healthy, but I think it's also healthy to know that it's okay to feel the feelings, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
How do you maintain the integrity of that innocence and that purity as you move forward in your creative life and your business life? But that's really hard to hold on to.
By always understanding that I don't have to do this alone. I think that has given me a degree of vulnerability and it's created a degree of psychological safety. And it's also given more depth to my friendships and it's given more structure and I think permission to build trust within my professional relationships. It is really a privilege to be in this business. In most businesses, it's a privilege from my perspective. And I try to not take for granted the things that I've been able to achieve just from pulling myself up from the little 7-year-old to today. Nothing is given or handed to me. So I think that it also has given me a degree of perspective.
Wow. I feel like so many people are going to relate to what you're saying because so many people are there. I want to get out of this for a little bit, but I do want to come back because I think what you're saying is really valuable to a lot of our listeners and viewers. I'm really curious about what you had to unlearn from working in agency work and then leading global creative teams at Twitter, Starbucks, and other massive corporations. Is there anything that you had to unlearn to operate at that scale?
You know what? I've been very fortunate because it hasn't necessarily been unlearning. What I've pulled forward in each opportunity that it's given me the perspective to show up more prepared. And I would say that from my very first agency experience at being at Wieden and Kennedy and only working on one brand, which was Nike, and also a brand that had been with Wieden and Kennedy rather for at that point, I think about 20 years. There was so much that I was learning about Nike, about the teams at Wieden, the operating structure, the dysfunction of it all. And the thing that I learned at Wieden that was so critical for me was actually following your voice, your heart. And I think Wieden probably doubled that, for me at that time, doubled down too much on that because I think there was a lot of business acumen that I wasn't getting along the way. But I think actually, just to answer your question and not answer around it, I had to somewhat unlearn a little bit of that Wieden lead from the gut exclusively and to really start developing some acumen around stronger strategic precision and really being able to be someone that thought like my peers that were on the Nike side, which was really important. And I think a lot of creatives who come from agencies have to unlearn that to a degree to be successful when you go into big companies like an Apple, Disney, where I spent some time, Starbucks, but the creative part, the foundation that I got at the Martin Agency and at Wieden and Kennedy and at Chiat Day were critical. But the unlearning was really just not leading so exclusively from a place of like creativity for the sake of creativity.
So on the flip side of that, what have you embraced in order to stay effective in this ever evolving industry and the processes, how people are consuming media?
There's the two questions. I think the first part is like, how have I really continued to evolve? And one, I love our industry. I love it. And I love solving problems, big ones. I love coming into companies that are at massive inflection points, like when I got to Disney, when Disney Plus was launched, like when I got to Twitter, when Twitter was going through some very extreme growing pains as a brand, when I got to spend a small amount of time fractionally at Virgin Galactic, another brand that was like trying to find its way in a category that it was inventing, and then Starbucks. It's just, I love that. And I think I love complexity. Like I truly love strategic complexity because I like taking these things and unpacking them and putting them into a systems operational process that allows structure for teams to do their best work, for my cross-functional marketing partners to see how the work we're doing is actually impactful to drive business. That was something that I honestly, in terms of learning how to structure teams and think more strategically about business, is something Disney 100% gave me. And I think, again, a lot of my colleagues who I was with during my agency days and are still at agencies, like what I've been able to grow into and learn and fail forward from has given me an immense perspective that has sharpened how I show up and think and demonstrate as a creative executive now.
You mentioned failure, and failure is very personal to me. I don't know why I have this deep love for failure, because to me, failure is like growth and risk taking and courage and just all the things that kids are not afraid to do. So as you mentioned failure, and then earlier on, I said I was going to come back to this. You mentioned vulnerability, and you talk about failure positioned you for leadership. Tell us about what does that mean to you? And was there a time or a moment where you felt that there was failure around you, and how did you embrace that? And how did that change for you?
Yes. When I joined Disney, I was brought into a role I'd never done before, and that was head of content marketing for Disney General Entertainment to support two major businesses, the Disney Channel and also National Geographic, both very strong linear businesses that were now preparing to scale up and support Disney Plus. And the job as written when I was coming into the role was not that job. It was a more creative-led role, and it was only one brand, and that was the Disney Channel. And things pivoted, and this amazing gentleman, if you happen to be listening, Peter Rice, or if any of Peter Rice, I know you do, Julie, that guy, he's amazing on so many different levels. And that's a whole separate podcast, but I genuinely have a great deal of admiration and respect and heart for Peter Rice. They ultimately pivoted the role from just a creative role, just running the Disney Channel, to a content marketing role running the Disney Channel and also National Geographic. For me, that was a Halley's Comet moment. I'm like, this is not going to happen again in my career. And I can't say no, regardless of the outcome, because I am going to learn either way. And by either way, if I succeed or if I take on something that is oversized in a way unlike anything I had taken on in my career. And the job was about bringing these two marketing teams together. It was a systems job. It was strategic work across multiple pillars. So I had domain over marketing strategy, creative, social, comms, media, and production. And I would say probably 2/3 of those things I could really speak to competently. But what I had not done up to that point was restructured essentially a 600-person organization at the speed of which Disney's business runs. I had two bosses, one from the Disney Channel side and another from the Nat Geo side. So I had two bosses and reporting into Peter Rice and learning the job on the job. And this is the crux of it all. I was doing it all remotely because it was during the pandemic.
Oh,
it was challenging. So I did everything I could to get up to speed and learn the business in real time. And I did a decent job, but decent for me wasn't enough. And it wasn't enough for the people who were in the leadership team as well. That is where there was a moment there where I just had to concede and ask for help. And it didn't feel good to ask for help in a moment where had taken on the biggest job of my career in some ways because it was so unlike anything I'd done in my career. I didn't want to let Peter down. I didn't want to let the presidents of the two businesses down. I didn't want to let my leadership team down. And I daily it was painful going into these meetings, fearful of what I didn't know. It was painful walking into conversations where I was so out of my depth. And ultimately, I did step down from that role because while I was getting up to speed-ish and I was doing the job effectively-ish, they needed someone in that role that had more. For me at the time, it was very disappointing to feel that I'd let down Peter and let down my team. I reflected on that experience and what I did right and what I could have done differently and coming out of that role. And I don't think I've ever talked about this Disney opportunity to the extent that I have right now with you two.
Wow.
It's some years past and I've grown so much from it, but that level of failure and learning and growth they all corresponded, right? And it's because of Disney that I was able to do things far better as a creative leader in roles since Disney. And I'm okay with really acknowledging how excited I was to step into that opportunity, how challenging it was with all the things that were against me and for me, by the way. And Disney gave me an education, a business degree that no one in my peer group has. And it has been a game enhancer when I have gone into other opportunities.
What changed in you? Like specifically, what do you think changed in you because of that?
I learned to not just only have more empathy for how content marketing and marketing works, the practical skill sets now of how to build a team, operationalize a team, to create a foundation for a team to work more cross-functionally and with speed and accuracy with data and all of the things that we do to connect consumers to the things that we do. There is no other company on the planet Earth that has the connection and reach into culture on every level that Disney does. And it's integrated, the flywheel. And most brands market to silos. Disney does not. And that when you start going double clicking on that and understanding how and what it takes to operate a business at scale for over now 100 years at the sort of leadership and team level, it's incredible. And I love that I had that opportunity and that I've been able to use that in the roles that I've had since. And I just now look at, and I say this a lot, my motto, my mantra, my reason for being in this industry is creativity in service of business results. And that moment was born in that free falling at Disney. Now, look, I'm really hard on myself. I'm being very hard on myself about the Disney thing. There's a lot of great things that happened. And I was able to do a lot of great work and have relationships that I still maintain to this day. And had I had not gone into the EVP, head of content marketing role, and maybe the SVP, head of creative, I'd still be there. However, again, what that company and those folks that supported me gave me, I tell you, you're not going to find too many people that have as many touch points across our industry like myself that can connect the dots and deliver, and not just creatively.
Yeah.
This is such a treat for us to not just have you here, but for you to be so gracious with your vulnerability and sharing this with us, because this is exactly why people listen to these podcasts, because they are a fly on a wall in a conversation that they would never, ever be able to listen to otherwise. So thank you so much for that. And the reason why I wanted to ask about the failure part is because I listen a lot to other podcasts, and Masters of Scale is one of my favorites. And Reid Hoffman is always talking about failing forward and how the risk taking that leaders have to take is on another level. And that's exactly why leaders are leaders, because they take risks and see things that most people don't. And that's the definition of faith, is like seeing something that no one else does and going forward and going after that. So this was my favorite question of today. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we just started.
I know. Can this please be 5 hours? I think what you shared, Jayanta, is so relatable to people, because you get an opportunity and we just have this great imposter syndrome, but you don't want to say no to the opportunity because there's so much to gain and learn. I think that opportunity for you and all that you learned in that time is incredible. I remember when you got it, and I remember watching and cheering and hearing everything you were doing, and not everything lasts forever either. And everybody learns lessons from the story of their life and the story of their career. So to hear you talk about it now after all these years is a gift really to everyone that's listening.
Yeah. And I want to say, because it's a really important piece of the story and it's good to drop it here. What Peter Rice said to me, and Gary Marsh specifically, coming into that job, we know there's stuff you don't know, and we're going to support you in learning what you don't know. And that, for me, lowered the shields in terms of imposter syndrome. And I think that's a little bit of why it hurt, was I was going through it, that I wasn't able to really connect the dots fast enough. We know what you don't know. That's exactly how Gary said it. And I'm like, then that's phenomenal. And I'm going to give 1,000%. And I gave 1,700%. And there's another story with Dan Wyden. When I first joined Wyden & Kennedy, I took Dan to lunch, and there was something I wanted to share with him. And I sat down, we had our waters, or sitting down, and I said, Dan, thank you for having lunch with me. I want to share something with you because I want your perspective. And I had been on a shoot, and I had given wrong direction, and it ended up eating up a lot of time, and I didn't feel good about basically wasting money. And Dan just stopped and looked at me, and he said, Jayanta, my boy, you're no good to me unless you've made 3 major mistakes. And I'm like, great, I got 2 more to go. Think about the permission that leadership can give someone coming into roles that helps minimize this feeling of imposter syndrome. I've truly never walked into any opportunity where I didn't feel I could not succeed. And I'm not taking on anything that I wasn't capable of delivering double fold or triple or quadruple. And so I have had less imposter syndrome, and we can talk about that probably through another lens, but I do think imposter syndrome is real. But you also, what is the environment you come into that is actually giving you permission to fall and get up, and they're going to help you up? Because we put ourselves through enough things as it is in our personal and professional lives. Imposter syndrome as a construct, I just don't want to punish myself in that way, because I do it in other ways in my daily existence. But I think it's real to bring that up. But I just wanted to acknowledge that with Disney, they told me they knew what I didn't know. Yeah. And that for me was like the key into the doorway. And then Dan Wyden saying, you're no use to this organization unless you've made 3 major mistakes. That was, again, one, creates psychological safety, right? Mm-hmm. And 2, it really allows one to be vulnerable and authentic and not have to, like for me, sometimes imposter syndrome could be the result of like you're hiding from something that you know you can't do, versus you're being given an opportunity to learn along the way. And how are we ever going to be better leaders, to your Reed story, Joanna? No way you could learn any of this in college. There's no way.
Exactly.
Unless you're born into a family where that has a business, where you've watched your mother, father, like family teach you these things, or you've watched them directly. No way. Again, that's why I look on the other side of the Disney opportunity and I'm like, wow, what momentous opportunity for me. And now the people that I get to work with and help create impact with.
What Dan said to you is such an incredible leadership style. It's really, that's wonderful. There's not everyone's like that. It's like you're in, you fail, you're out. People are not disposable. People need to evolve and get their bearings and then be able to shine their light. So it's pretty wonderful. He said that. It just reminded me of something right before I started Disney. I was shopping one day and I saw this poster that said, "But what if I fail?" And then the response was, "But darling, what if you fly?" And to me, I was like, okay, I'm taking this in with me as I move forward in my life.
And you put that on your mats because I saw it and I wanted to buy that one.
Yeah, I put it, that's exact, but I saw it in a store at the exact right time.
I love that. You and I were talking about this, how leaders, especially in corporate America, they will say, yeah, come in, you're disruptive, you're new, you're fresh, you're this and that. And then they just they throw you out 8 months later or 18 months later.
In terms of leadership, you choose your team and then you invest in them to do their best. I think that is the best way to move forward. And it sounds like that's the leader that you had in Dan, Jayanta, and that's the leader that you are.
I think it's the type of leader I've become. And just the last reflection on Disney, the leadership lesson for me that has transformed how I show up today is really how I engage with my leadership team to build trust, especially in an environment where I didn't know as much as they did. There's absolutely nothing more intimidating than being the leader of a team where the team has 15 years more experience than you, and the indifference that could create. And I think, and again, that opportunity, as I've shared, was just transformative for me. But the thing that I walked away from Disney and how I've applied that in terms of being a better leader at Starbucks, at other companies, is I now know how to listen differently and know how to ask questions more intentionally. And I really know how to get out of the way. And I think that Dan 3 mistakes is basically him getting out of the way and letting the lesson become the leader of how you show up. It's always a journey of becoming. That's starting to sound like the theme of our podcast right now.
Jay, what's your perspective on giving somebody the runway to really show their skill set and apply their skill set in a role?
I 100% feel like that I've thrived because I was giving the runway. I think what I do in shaping and laying the groundwork for a runway is to ensure that runway has the right strategic North Star, the right ability for me to step away and to create an invitation for my team to come to me when things are going well or not going well. That's part of that foundation of that runway. And it's okay to fail and to create an environment where experimentation, no matter good or bad, is rewarded through just learning. And the final sort of layer of that would be just stoking curiosity and creating feedback loops where you're sharing things that give people an opportunity to express themselves through the work. The strategic North Star is a really important one in helping a team develop how to move through a process on a project to drive a business result or impact.
For sure. And we have some of those questions coming. In terms of your taste and your creative instincts have had an effect on so many brands and culture today. When you know that you have to execute an idea or you've come up with something that you think is really relevant and meaningful and you have to manage a team of however many, 600 people, how do you maintain the integrity of that idea? And how do you make sure it's executed as it was originally envisioned?
I'm going to try to get this quote because I just heard it this morning and I loved it so much. It was from Chuck D. And he was talking about hip hop. And he used style, story, substance, and strategy. Maybe it was the fourth S. Oh, no, it was soul. He said soul. When I heard that, I was like, he just broke down the core of how and why I do what I do. Style, story, structure, and soul. Style, story, structure, and soul. And my fifth one would be strategy. When I think about those words and how I apply them to how I show up in the world, like it gives me goosebumps maybe. And I think those are words, what amazing like characteristics for how you show up as a leader and inspire a team and give them those opportunities as challenges.
How do you inspire your teams?
I know, I'm over here taking notes because I feel like I want to be like you when I grow up. Yeah, like I feel like the thing that my entire career I strive to do is to learn how to be a good leader. And I feel like I'm getting so much from you. So I'm taking notes.
Welcome. How do I inspire my teams? One, I am first inspired by my teams. So it's a mutuality and reciprocity is the process. And that also takes a lot of the onus off of me to be this voice of all knowing because I don't know. And I think that's the other part is I always acknowledge daily I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. And I'm actually really grateful for what I don't know and I'm still learning. And I think that creates a space for teams to show up, contribute, and feel supported and also feel okay with not knowing as well. I think the other thing more practically as a leader is always having a very clear objective for the team, having a very clear, this is what we're aiming for. I don't ever show up with ambiguity. I may have in the past. My answers aren't vague or meandering. They're tied objectively to what we're trying to solve for. And that builds a confidence and trust with teams. And I've also learned, Disney, how to orient around systems thinking and systems operations that also, honestly, Joanna, and I learned this from Jack Dorsey when I was at Twitter. Jack said something really interesting that I've remembered to this moment. And I was asking him about maybe a very similar question around leadership. He said to me, the mark of a true leader by his interpretation was someone that could walk away from an organization and it would still run incredibly well. And then he gave two examples. The example he gave was Twitter. The way Twitter was born was through dependencies and it's just the nature of that social media platform and pretty much to this day. And I think in all the right ways, in the best ways. But then he talked about how he built Square, which was his second company. And if you look at the way Square is demonstrating from a business perspective and Twitter, you see that proof of concept. So as a leader for me, what I think from a team level, the things I just shared with you, but fundamentally what I want my contribution to be to the industry and what I leave behind is a foundation within a team, within an organization that the next leader can come into and build from. It's almost the MacBook OS or the iPhone iOS. That architecture of that OS is from the next platform that Steve Jobs had before he was brought back to Apple. And by the way, all they've done is continue to build on top of that platform. And it's only made it stronger because it's such a strong foundation. So as a leader, yes, inspiring a team is very important and to not do it performatively, and to do it with a great degree of vulnerability and just curiosity. But practically, like the gangster move is then once Jayanta has left said organization, did they have to rebuild the process or they just take it and keep building on it? And I can confidently and comfortably say that with the opportunities that I've had, because I'm still seeing the work in the world, what I contributed and built with my teams in that moment is enduring, very enduring. So I think that to me, there's two sides. There's the soul and science of leadership.
Love that.
Wow. So I've worked inside of large networks and I've worked in smaller companies. I'm a tech founder. I'm a startup founder. So when you were saying that the way you lead your teams is you're clear with direction and requirements. And I'm really curious about this because I think this is where, as a startup founder, you don't know everything at the beginning. There's a series of events where you're trying to figure out product market fit. You're trying to figure out your go-to-market strategy. You're trying to figure out so many things that at a larger corporation or a larger organization, those things already exist. So you're executing something that already comes with a system in place, but you're a systems builder. So what's the difference between how you scale large teams and small teams based on what you've experienced? Because I really need to know.
Yeah, look, that is a really great question, and it takes me back to Disney. It takes me to Starbucks, and I can like touch on Twitter. So I love large, iconic, heritage like brands. I do all day. And when I've come into companies like a Disney or Starbucks, I'll use those two examples. Not only are you coming into systems that are very much structured, you're also coming into teams who've been doing these things for 20 years in some instances. And at Disney, that was the case. And at Starbucks, that was the case. So, as someone that has come from medium sized companies and helped support startups along the way here and there, what I love about going to big companies is they have story, they have deep cultural philosophy. And the job becomes, how are you connecting that story, that essence of said brand to today? And a lot of times when you're coming into big companies with legacy teams, you're not throwing out the sort of core DNA of a team. You're actually just helping shed new ways of working and optimizing in ways that takes what they know and actually create even stronger connections to where the business needs to go in that moment and forward. And it's for me, a lot easier to go to a very big company and do that work because at my core, I am a disruptor. I'm a disruptor with a purpose, a rebel with a cause. And that cause is to create stronger alignment between where the business needs to be furthered and how to get there. And you can't do that with teams who have long-standing tenures at companies by waving your arms, showing inspirational videos, and then saying, okay, let's get to work. And that was part of where I was learning my way at Disney. It's like I did the inspirational all hands, but it lacked the structure and direction and clarity of how to get there. And I learned that, again, I keep referring back to Disney because it was rich in terms of what it gave me. I think that piece is what was at Disney. And then at Starbucks, oh my God, by the way, not many people would say this out loud or maybe could say this, but every job I've had has been a dream job, literally, from Wyden Kennedy to working with Lee Clow, to being at Apple, to working alongside and around Jack Dorsey at Twitter, to meeting Richard Branson when I was at Virgin Galactic, to my time sitting in Howard Schultz's office talking about his founding story for Starbucks. But Starbucks is a place I always wanted to be. What an amazing story, and what an amazing turnaround that is happening right now with Brian Nichols as well. I got to Starbucks when Lakshman was there, and it was an amazing opportunity to start to do the work that they're continuing to do today. I love these companies that have such strong histories and have connected to consumers in ways that are some of our core memories of growing up, or the ritual of drinking coffee or going into a coffee shop. Or I love that about big brands and what they've contributed. And when they lose their way, those are the best times to be in an organization because you're pretty much going to get an opportunity to try what has not been done. But the trick within trying what's not ever been done, back to your question, Joanna, is ensuring that you're pulling through the foundational aspects of what the brand stands for, helping teams see that maybe have gotten lost their way because they've become so operationalized, and now competition has actually created an offset where the said company is not competing as competitively or from a mindshare perspective as they had. You cannot rest on your laurels. And those, again, are the best times to be at those companies. And that happens to have been every time I've jumped into a company. And now with smaller teams, like at Twitter, the big challenge there was just creating cross-functional trust between the creative team that was growing and the marketing team that was perpetually scrambling, and creating some degree of clarity strategically, and then supporting the team. And I would say what I love at smaller companies as a leader, and I still appreciate this to this day, is being able to lead from the front and lead from the back in those moments, to demonstrate best practices and then to step back and say, now you drive. And
what does that mean, leading from the front and from the back?
Leading from the front, and this is Satya from Microsoft, is someone that has championed this principle more recently, but that means being able to be with the team and leading from the front line, being in the work, and also leading from the back, which means you got this and I'm here. That's how I interpret it.
Mm.
And it's some people will call it being a player coach, if that's a better analogy. I think smaller companies across the board, there's an opportunity because you're learning in real time and you're creating that story that Disney created in the 50s, that Howard Schultz cultivated in the 80s, that Richard Branson from college in the UK started with his magazine that then perpetuated on. Amazing storytellers, amazing entrepreneurs that have created long-standing businesses that will continue to be talked about.
Which of those was like the startup, like Twitter?
Twitter wasn't in startup mode when I got there. They were a 10-year-old company that was really starting to finally get into branding itself and not just depending on the platform. When Twitter had a bad day, people hated Twitter. It had a good day, like Oprah tweeted something, and everyone loved Twitter. So the work that I did with a lot of amazing people in that moment was to really help people understand why they should have Twitter on their phone. And Jack Dorsey dropped a real great line that Joel Lullenfeld, who was the VP of brand marketing, shared with me, which was, as you're thinking about the work we're about to do together, think of Twitter as a platform that shows sides and doesn't take sides all day. And the work that we did based on that was outstanding. That's where Twitter was at its 10-year mark. With Virgin Galactic, it's just a perpetual startup. When you're doing anything that involves flying people into lower Earth orbit, there's a lot of regulation and a lot of thoughtfulness that has to go into the safety of said participants in that journey. I think when I got an opportunity to spend a little bit of time at Virgin Galactic, it was to reintroduce that space program post-COVID. And they're also in fundraising mode, as I'm sure both of you know about with small businesses and startups. I think the Virgin Galactic story really co-opted a lot of the Branson story. So from there, it was really taking that essence and then building stronger brand systems and graphic systems and all the things that you would do to ensure when something shows up in the world, it has a presence and a story and a why and a system. I love all of that. I really love all of that. And when you think back to the beginning of this conversation, and I'm going to connect this to Virgin Galactic and the why of taking that opportunity, the 7-year-old staring into the night sky, waiting for aliens to pick him up, or that 7 to 15-year-old in those weekly trips to the Smithsonian Mall and going to the Air and Space Museum, which literally was my first stop. And last year when I went back home, I did it again. I always do it. And having an opportunity to support Richard Branson in that platform, like I said, dream.
There's only one Jayanta Jenkins. You have those dream jobs because you're you and because you think the way that you do and you speak the way you do so poetically. And I will say that knowing you this long, I've seen that you always live and breathe your jobs. Like it becomes you. Like before you started Virgin Galactic, you went skydiving.
That is right. Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're like, come on, you're going to go with me. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I've never skydived. But the fact that you did that to get in the headspace and like just really be there ready to start that job is just so you, because you always give your best. You give 1,000,000% to every job, creatively, spiritually, personally, everything. And that
I love what I do. Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Aww.
I really and truly love what I get to contribute to. And it's not work. I get to have these types of conversations with amazing individuals like yourselves. I get to sit in rooms and learn so many amazing things about the things that I loved growing up. And I get to contribute along the way to inspire people to think differently about what a brand can or could mean in their lives, or simply how they show up for themselves, period. Yeah, thank you for that.
I want to talk about culture. Have you ever been in a position where culture moved faster than the organization did? And what did that teach you or show you about the system?
Yeah, I'm going to go with what you will discover is an obvious one. I'll start with COVID. Think about what COVID did to the culture of everything when we were in the midst of that, and how it transformed communication, connection, businesses, the conversation. And look how we mobilized around technology and just community in that moment. That was amazing to me. And I think about that because had COVID happened at an era where we didn't have such amazing connectivity digitally, we would not have been able to share communication about best practices along the way. It could have been a lot worse for the economy. It could have been a lot worse for the community than it was, because it was not good. But I think COVID was one of those like catalyst moments where culture moved. It pivoted. It didn't even move. It just basically did a U-turn. And then it started going left, right, left, right. And we found a way to hold it together.
Totally. I want to shift to music, because music has been a big part of your life and your inspiration. And even when we were younger, I remember one of my favorite stories of us is laying on the floor of your dorm room, staring at the ceiling and listening to Prince for 8 hours at a time and just talking about life. But it really was the experience of Jayanta and what inspired you. And now you DJ on the side, and music plays such a big, influential role. Can you talk a little bit about that as it applies to your career and your life?
Yeah, it's all one thing. So I'm just going to talk about it from a place of singularity. Music, for me, I interpret it as frequency, it's math, it's rhythm, it's color, it's borderless, it can time travel. You can time travel with it. You can listen to a song from the 1800s to connect to the past. And there are bits of music that have been parts of movements, and music places us in collective moments in history in ways that are just amazingly beautiful to me. And I apply that to all music. I think Prince just happens to be someone that embodies a lot of what I love about culture and my journey that is very specific. But overall, I cannot tell you how influential music has been for me and the things that I've done for brands. Like every music track that I've been able to align with messages and stories across every brand that I've ever worked on has been a banger. And I think being a DJ is almost like being a conductor of an orchestra, except as the DJ, you're just conducting the dance floor, and the music becomes the thing that helps create that movement. And so I've always used like my early days of DJing and the few clubs that I did in Portland, it was almost like a focus group. There you go. I played this song, and if I play this song next, is this going to get the crowd even more hyped? Oh, shit. No, they're leaving the dance floor. Quickly, reframe, regroup. And by the way, any DJ would probably agree with this. The reset song, when you're having a moment where the dance floor is starting to go empty, there's many, but one of the main ones is Want to Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson. That always gets people back on the dance floor.
Good to know.
Yeah, I think music continues to be such an important part of how I go through the world.
Julia, I don't know if you told Jayanta about our song making.
I think he said, did you see the song that we made for Neil Sherman's?
Not yet, I don't think.
Okay, you're going to get a nice present today. I'll send it to you. But go ahead.
I think we might end up winning a Grammy for this Oscar at some point. So we're on our way to becoming EGOTs one day.
Love that.
You wanted to bring it back to Starbucks a little bit, because at Starbucks, it seems like you did even beyond like the kind of stuff that you were doing before. At Virgin Galactic, you were doing spatial stuff, but at Starbucks, you were now getting into stores, like physical stores. Is that something that you had to do throughout your career? So what was that experience like? You were reshaping stores, you were reshaping packaging, you were reshaping experiences, all under one umbrella. I guess maybe Disney was a little bit similar.
Yeah, Disney is a really good one-to-one. It's a perfect one-to-one. Starbucks, as I mentioned, has such an amazing story, the third place. And within the HQ of Starbucks, there's I think it's maybe on the 7th floor. I'm missing where exactly this is, but there's a floor within the Starbucks HQ that has basically like a history of and some of the core principles of the brand. And on the wall large was uplift the everyday. And when I first got to Starbucks and I saw that, I'm like, that is the magnetic north for me as I'm going through this experience and opportunity. And as I was shaping narratives with the team around how we're going to represent ourselves, because one of the things, and this was at Disney as well, with big teams who've been at companies for a long time, is to really help internal agencies go from a service mindset to a strategic one. That uplift the everyday became really vital for me, how to reframe and shape the internal creative studio. And that as an organizing principle, and then understanding what the business drivers were for that year helps me then distill how to work across retail, across digital, across packaging. And I really got the benefit of relying on the expertise of the team who had been doing those things for quite some time. But what had happened with Starbucks in that moment is all of those experiences within the store, on the app, and the marketing were just happening incongruently, right? So the job became, like at Disney, like at any great brand, what is the singular thesis that all the work lines up to? So when it shows up and consumers having a collective or a singular experience, a single expression of an intent of what you're trying to tell a story around. And what's so great about Starbucks is they do this seasonally, right? Throughout the year. And the big moment for them is PSL. What is PSL? I bet more than half the people know that's pumpkin spice latte. And
I know.
I was really surprised to learn that because I was like, I don't think I've ever bought that.
yeah, but when it's pumpkin spice latte season, the world turns on. But that's
There
it
you
for
go.
the brand.
And
That's
I'm
a moment
getting
for
one
the
this year.
brand. And there are just a lot of key moments, and you can plan for those moments, and you actually have to. So you're able to drive packaging and digital experiences and marketing narratives and product launches around, again, first, what is the CEO, like business driving principle? And then from there, I say this is so matter of fact and easy to do, but it requires a lot of what we've been talking about throughout this entire conversation is building those trusts, those tangents of trust, being a strategic operator, and then pulling through narratives that really operate on behalf of the impact that you want to drive for the business. And again, that's why I say creativity in service of business results for me. And what an amazing canvas Starbucks has with the stores, with the one thing that I walk away really appreciating about Starbucks are the baristas. They are really the essence of that company, right? And then the marketing is just there to really create the runway for them to do what they do best, and that is interact with customers and bring joy, uplifting every day. But again, when I got there, everything was just firing in different directions. And the job, I really had to start with the team. Again, service mindset to strategic mindset. And I had an amazing set of direct reports there. And then, gosh, man, the CMO that was really pivotal in bringing me on, Brady Brewer, what an amazing human being. Look, I talked about Dan Wyden, I didn't mention a lot about Lee Clow, but Lee Clow is absolutely one of those people that has been there for me throughout my journey. And when I met Brady, when I was being interviewed for the role, I was going to do anything it took to make sure I got that job. I was very fortunate to get the job. But Brady is just someone, he's been at the company for a long time, and he just really understood the brand, and he really helped me define a path that helped me during my time at Starbucks. And then that goes, I'm going to reverse engineer back into your question around just this throughput, an omni-channel approach to how you're showing up and driving business results. Particularly, again, with Starbucks at the time, there were so many headwinds, and there was strikes, and there was quarter after quarter of losses and sentiment just going downward. So it was a lot to take on as someone new with a lot of responsibility. But it's in those moments that I was better positioned than I was at Disney, but it was a lot of fun. It was really hard. And they've had to make a lot of hard decisions since moving with Brian Nichols. But it's been so admire what's happening under Brian's leadership at Starbucks. And
the current design and all those flower things, is that under what leadership?
So the current work that's in the world is under Brian Nichols' tenure, leadership, and then all the great people who are operating on behalf of how he's really reset the business.
You have had such an incredible impact on so many brands and culture in so many ways. When you think about all that you've done, like you're right, your jobs are dream jobs, like we said, but you have had an impact on all of them. And I was telling Johanna before the podcast, I remember when I was working at MTV in Times Square, and Twitter was a newer thing at the time. Like not everyone understood exactly what it was. I walked out of MTV in Times Square, and I saw this huge billboard of a picture of Prince and a hashtag. And I was like, oh my God, that is so Jayanta, number one. And second of all, now I get it. It's just a hashtag Prince. And that is how he communicated it. It was so brilliant. And to me, like, that is one of the campaigns in my life I'll always remember. It explained it, it celebrated it, and it was just so very much came out of your brain.
You know what? Yes, it did. And thank you. It's one of my I've done so many amazing things across my journey up to this point, and there's more to come. But that one was like a moment where if I ever had any inkling of imposter syndrome, it 100% went away, because that idea, one, strategically came out of that conversation with Joel and the marketing team about Twitter as a platform that shows sides and doesn't take sides. And then from there, I was actually in New York because I was visiting the New York Twitter office, and I was sitting at dinner by myself, playing on my phone, and I've been looking at the brand guidelines for Twitter. I used a lot of super graphics. And then one of the super graphics was this big hashtag, but it wasn't connected to anything at the time except words. And I took that hashtag and just put it against, I think World Cup may have been coming up that year, or whatever it was. I took that hashtag on my phone and made the big hashtag next to the image. And I was like, huh. And it's one of the only ideas in my 20 years where what you saw in Times Square was exactly what was approved by Jack Dorsey in the room. It did not change. You know what maybe changed is the position of the hashtag. But the idea and what it did for the company and what it did for people going, oh. And what was also, I think, brilliant about that work is it invited you into the conversation, because that's what Twitter does. And when Prince passed away, that's when we did that. It's like you could have said hashtag Prince forever, or which would take you down one path, or that image which you can bring your own story to. And that really was the invitation and promise of that platform, and getting an opportunity to discover people's perspectives and learn from. And that goes back to, what I would say to my 7-year-old self, which is around curiosity and putting yourself in other people's shoes. And I think that Twitter work probably was created by that 7-year-old. If you think about the just sheer insane simplicity of that, how that worked.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh, that's powerful.
It was just so simple and so brilliant.
Yeah.
It's magic.
We're very curious to hear from senior executives, like their opinion on the future. From your point of view, where do you think the advertising and marketing media is headed? Where do you think it'll be in 10 years?
I am starting to see a lot of people that I'm in conversation with talking about what are the experiences that we can create that bring communities back together. It's almost like the Starbucks third place. And I hope, because again, this is not a prediction or where I think things are going, but my hope is that as we continue to have agentic intelligence, the ability to connect meaningfully to each other, to find even better ways to celebrate how we share and communicate with each other and not use those systems to separate us. That would be an amazing thing to see the advertising, marketing, and media like entities stoke. The places and people that I connect with, people like you two, are on that path of how are we using all of this to really inspire people. That's what I would hope for. And as a parent, as I'm sure a lot of people listening are, when I watch my 7-year-old who loves his iPad, loves his Nintendo Switch, he amazingly loves the tactical, practical, the analog world as well. And I'm helping him with that. And it's really, as a Gen Xer, it's really great to provide a digital first Gen Alpha kid the practical world. Get out in nature, go for walks. And I think it's just going to enhance his ability to tell stories and connect more intelligently and thoughtfully on these platforms that are going to be unavoidable. And by the way, like, I love technology. Like, I love technology. And I just this week spawned my very first AI assistant via OpenClaw. And that's a whole other podcast. But we have a lot of tools, agentic tools, that can amplify how we show up creatively, personally, professionally, that utilized with the right intent, as the tools have been that came before even AI, I think it's going to help us create stronger stories, connect people to places that Bad Bunny, Super Bowl. Think about that 10 minutes of what he presented to us in that world that he immersed us in. I want more of that type of immersion and sharing stories to create more empathy, to create more inclusivity and not exclusivity. And by the way, like I don't mind people with opposing points of view. And if people are listening to this right now, like this guy, like whatever, these people, whatever, like that's the point. Have an opinion, because I don't know everything. I don't know anything, but I am really hopeful for what advertising, marketing, and media can do. And I think the contraction that's happening in the advertising world with holding companies is maybe a reaction to what we're talking about, which is the behaviors have shifted. The way brands operate, they have more direct access and control for the right reasons, and people are now having to catch up. It goes back to your question about what's it like operating as a creative executive at big, large companies with legacy teams, and how do you go in and help create a bridge toward now, from now to next, versus how do you sit back and just hope it's just a phase? AI is just a phase. TikTok is just a phase. And then you open your eyes 6 months later and you're like, oh, you're already 6 years behind.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah, we definitely want to spend more time talking about AI because we're passionate about how it amplifies us and makes us superhuman. Julie and I talk about this all the time. Just before this, I was telling her how, like, 15 years ago, my husband and I went to Australia and we met with a developer who put us into this big dome with 300 cameras, put all these things on our bodies, I forget what the name of them were. Yes, the trackers. And it took me longer to tell Julie the story than it took Julie to do exactly the same thing in CapCut. And now she has us like flying through the universe with laptops, and we're bringing this girl to life. Like, it took me seconds to make her stand up, walk, and talk. And I had to fly to the other side of the planet to do that 15 years ago.
It's fast. I will say, though, that my son, who's 17, was like, Mom, what are you posting online? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you and Johanna roller skating with laptops? So stupid. It is? I think it's so great. And I did it in 2 seconds. Anyway.
Or either really cool or really not cool.
I'm like, is that a good thing that I'm stupid?
We're making avatars of ourselves, fly through the universe. We, in skateboards and roller skates, we're creating songs. We could do everything and anything. We have superpowers.
Like, I feel like I was born too soon, because it's amazing. It's amazing.
Or you were born right on time, because it seems like if we just take care of ourselves and eat better, we're going to live a lot longer. So I think you're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah. Yes. There's a possibility. Live strong.
Yeah. Jayanta, first of all, thank you. I wish we had more time. I know you have to go. Where can people connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn is the best place. Jayanta Jenkins. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and I am in the world. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Johanna and Julie, to have spent some time with you today. Thank you so much.
This has been such a delight. It's been a gift to us. So thank you.
I know. I'm grateful. This has been an incredible conversation. This is why we've been friends for so long.
We are grateful for your time, and we'll see you soon. We might be bothering you again, so don't stay away for too long. Thanks for joining us on The Media Machine. If somebody sent you this, it's because they care about you and your future. The Media Machine is created by me, Johanna Salazar. I'm also the host and executive producer with Julie Kelman-Redding, who is also the co-host and editor. See you next time.